Good morning, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. Well, as you may know, I've been reading through the Gospel of Mark while on vacation this week. And this morning I was reading in Mark chapter 2. Now, I want to do three things real quick. I want to tell you the story, but I want to specifically hone in on a verse that seems a little almost unusual. And then I want to give some applications. We can do this in a couple of minutes. Here we go. The story is one where Jesus has returned to Capernaum, and that was a base of operation. And it looks like he stayed in the house of Peter, and he's there, and the crowds are huge. People can't even get through the door because everybody's crammed around. Everybody wants to see the healer, the teacher. They want to see Jesus. Well, there are these four fellas who have a child. It's teknon in the Greek, means child or son, but they have this boy he's paralyzed bad. He's on like a mat. And so they can't get through the door with him, but they want Jesus to heal him. So these houses back then had stairs on the outside. So they took the stairs on the outside up to the roof, a flat roof, and they removed the thatch or the tiles of the roof, and they lowered the fella down through the roof. Jesus, blown away by the faith of these four people to go to that much trouble, says to him, he says, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now, there are some scribes there. Scribes are specialists in Jewish law. They're not real hip over this. They're thinking in their hearts and minds, who is this fella that just pronounces this forgiveness of sins like this? And Jesus, knowing the thoughts of their heart, says, what's easier for me to say, your sins are forgiven, or rise, take up your mat and walk? So this is said so that you will know the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins. And Jesus says to him, rise, take up your mat and walk. That's the story. Now, I want to focus in on one small little clause in there. This is your second point. That small clause says, Jesus says, your sins are forgiven. Aphientai su hai hamartiai in the Greek. Aphientai, the verb there is in the passive voice. Jesus doesn't say, I forgive your sins. He says your sins, that being the subject of the clause, in a sense, the sentence, your sins are forgiven. Now that's a very typical Jewish statement back then, because the Jews were very careful not to ever pronounce the name of God or say the name of God. And so instead of saying God forgives your sins, Jesus says your sins are forgiven and uses this passive voice. Now Jesus is actually there pronouncing that God forgives the sins of that person. And that's what got them so indignant. That Jesus doesn't have a right to pronounce what God is saying or God is doing. That a prophet could do that. Nathan the prophet uses the same terms in the Old Testament. But how dare anyone speak for God in that way? And that got the scribes very upset. But you see, Jesus is doing something here. The forgiveness of sins and associated healing, that's something that's very typically ascribed to God in the Old Testament. In fact, Psalm 103, verse 3, speaks of the Lord as the one who forgives your sins and heals your diseases. And sin and disease are often hand in hand in the Bible, because the whole idea of disease is a result of sin. It's a result of the fall of humanity. It doesn't mean my specific sin caused my specific disease, but disease and sin go hand in hand. God didn't create us to be sinful, and he didn't create us to be full of disease. Those two go together. So Jesus makes this pronouncement, and that's what upsets the scribes so. Now here's the application. Jesus does have the authority to speak on behalf of God. And he's got that authority in my life, and he's got that authority in your life. And it's one of the reasons I want so much to learn more of the character and the words and the teachings of Jesus, because he's speaking on behalf of God into my life and into yours. So with that, join me tomorrow. We'll look more at the teachings of Jesus out of the Gospel of Mark. But that is your video thought for the day.